Welcome back to Rock Island Line, the podcast about the people, places, and issues that shape our city, Rock Island, Illinois. I'm your host, Annika O'Melia, and today I'm joined by Atticus Garrison. Atticus is a reference and instruction librarian at Blackhawk College. He specializes in digital literacy, AI, and academic integrity, and he's also a fellow Rock Islander. You might remember Atticus from season 1 of the podcast, where we talked all about artificial intelligence and large language models. Today, we're diving into the use of technology in community policing. We also talk a little bit about social media and the algorithms, and how communities might think about monitoring privacy matters to uphold human rights. I've been busy over here at the Rock Island Line researching and working on some bigger pieces and stories, planning for the future. Haven't released as many podcasts as I'd hoped, but hopefully in the fall I'll get back into a good rhythm. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and without further ado, here is my conversation with Atticus. Welcome back to the podcast, Atticus. I'm so grateful that you have joined me for round 2 of talking about Rock Island and technology, and I feel like you're kind of our resident tech expert, so thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's an honor to be the first return guest on the podcast.
Yes, you are the first return guest. I might have like my friend Jess come back at the end of this season. If I don't even know if we'll be able to call it that, because we were just chatting. I've been doing so much researching and like writing that I've not kept the pace of the podcast. Sure. So maybe this will give me a little like, oh gosh, I got to get back to doing this. Yeah, but we had kind of chatted just a little bit in the intervening months about, I think I maybe reached out to you about technology and surveillance in Rock Island. I had some questions, and so we kind of reconnected, and you've written this really cool piece that hopefully I can share on the Rock Island Line that kind of gives a rundown of how the city uses technology to, would you use the word surveil? Is that a good way to talk about this?
I don't know if the city would use the same term. I would use the term surveil. I don't quite know where the distinction lies on that. So thanks to your podcast, I have become a little bit more keyed into the city, and one of my, as I mentioned on the previous pod, one of my areas that they teach us about in library school is around personal privacy. So if you go to any library in the country, a lot of the librarians are very cautious and very careful about what they do with patron information. It goes back a number of decades to a whole bunch of legal precedents around the FBI wanting access to what you're checking out from the public library, right, and using those in court. So in library school, one of the things they teach about is personal privacy. So we have, in the city of Rock Island, an upcoming contract renewal with a company called Flock that runs ALPRs, which are automatic license plate reader cameras. They're set up all around the Quad Cities. And so I was vaguely aware of Flock cameras, what they were, and upon, paying more attention to city council meetings, etc., I decided to do some digging into what does our Flock contract look like, where the camera's located, and that kind of stuff. So I've also been, as we've been discussing, looking into what that contract looks like.
Yeah, and what did you, well, I guess to back up a little bit,
Sure.
Can you kind of reintroduce yourself? I will in the intro a little bit, but sure. Where does your personal interest and work experience get you civically motivated? Because this seems like it's unfolding out of your personal interests floating over into what does my city do in this domain?
Yeah. So my job as a reference and instruction librarian is I will teach a whole bunch of different things. Most of the time it's research skills, but another key component is information literacy and digital literacy, which is kind of like understanding sources of information and also understanding digital and technological tools and how students can use those at Blackhawk College. And so one of those kind of key areas that has grown out of that interest is AI has become a big thing in the last few years. So these Flock cameras that we're going to be talking about, they use AI as a way to theoretically make it easier to find a given car or a given person in the network of cameras. So this kind of interest is an offshoot of my professional interest of just looking into AI systems.
Yeah, and you're an Augustana graduate,
Yep.
You're raising your family here in Rock Island, and I think it's really cool how the things that you do professionally can inform and kind of help a city to keep an eye on something, because not every council member or resident has the knowledge, the curiosity, all the skills you have researching and in your it's so neat to have assets in a community that can lend a critical eye to something. It's really cool. You're a valuable resource. So yeah, so this kind of personal and professional interest, you started looking into the block situation in Rock Island, and what did you find through the course of your research?
Yeah, so ALPRs, or automatic license plate reader cameras, are a technology that's been around for 20 plus years. The basic building blocks of them. The early versions are kind of what would give you tickets if you're like on your way driving up to Chicago and then you just ignore the tollways and you drive right through. ALPRs are the thing that scan your license plate and then you get a little thing in the mail saying you owe the state of Illinois however much. So that's the basic building block of the cameras. What Flock and a lot of these other ALPR companies have done is they've taken that kind of building block of a camera that you place in different areas around your city to scan license plates, and they've built on that with some AI systems. I think it's like they call them AI visual models or something like that. So instead of just reading what the license plate number is, they're also able to read details around the car itself. So if your car has a visual marker that makes it unique, like maybe you have a certain bumper sticker, or maybe there's a dent on the left fender, or maybe, there's like a ladder attached to it. The camera is able to distinguish and the AI system is able to catalog and save those markers. One of the concerns with this technology and how it works is that means by definition they're always recording. So whether, no matter what time of day you drive past the camera, all of the data that is collected by the camera is saved and sent to Flock. So this is different from something like a speed camera, kind of like what they have over in Davenport, where the only time that those speed cameras are activated are when someone triggers the camera. So if you drive past the camera going like 80 and a 40, right, that will trigger a photo being taken, and then you get that letter in the mail saying, hey, you were speeding.
This happens to me whenever I take my kids to Camp Abe Lincoln. There's like in Buffalo, there's this spot where the speed limit changes so quickly, and I have trained myself now to be like, what is the speed limit here? Because the sign says something, and then all of a sudden you're in a different zone. And I probably get 2 of those a year, I would say.
Yeah. So that's pretty normal, especially on the Iowa side, is those speed cameras. The Flock cameras, or the ALPR cameras, work a little bit differently. They are always recording every car that passes in front of it, every animal that passes in front of it, every person that passes in front of it is cataloged and sent to the cloud or the data centers that Flock provides. So that's the basics of how they work. And then our police departments in the Quad Cities can query that database for information. So if someone stole a car, for example, Rock Island Police Department can put the license plate number of that car and say this was a stolen car, and then it'll look at all of the Flock network of cameras and see if that car had driven past any of the cameras. And theoretically, they can use that to catch the perpetrator or catch the person that stole that car or whatever the crime is that they're trying to solve with it.
Yeah, which sounds really awesome. Like I'm imagining like if someone was reporting a missing person, or you thought maybe your child was kidnapped and they drove away in a car with a blue car with a dent on one side, could you query it that way? Like, show me all blue cars, show me cars with dents.
Yeah.
It had a stick figure family on the back. Can it get that specific?
It can. The effectiveness of that method, just on the studies I've seen, it is less effective at that. And it can even get license plate numbers wrong as well. Like, I even have a family member that received a ticket in the mail from New Jersey this past month from an ALPR saying that they were and they were not in New Jersey. They were in Moline, Illinois. And so they had to submit their Ring camera footage, ironically, saying, hey, the car that you are trying to ticket was in Illinois on the date that you are claiming. So, I mean,
it's a battle of the AIs.
Yeah. It's two AI camera systems going at each other, but so they're not infallible, but theoretically, yes, you could put in any identifying information, and that could query the system and be able to catch those things. And from conversations I've had with city officials, one of the main reasons that Flock is so appealing is, if you remember a few years ago, there was a rash of people breaking into, I think it was like Kias and Hyundais.
Catalytic converter. Stealing the...
It was less that, but it was the joyriding. It was younger folks were breaking into cars, and they were really easy to hotwire Kias and Hyundais, and you could, they would take the car and drive it around the Quad Cities for a bit and then leave it for junk somewhere. And that was there was a rash of those kind of crimes a few years ago, and theoretically these Flock cameras could help get people back their cars that were stolen a lot quicker. So there was a perceived need that arose from that rash of crimes, the carjacking.
Yeah, so you can see the applications or the cases where it would be really useful and helpful to a police department. Yeah. In looking into all of this, what are the kind of issues that arise? Like what comes up, or how is this technology perhaps misused?
Yeah, I think one of the main issues that comes up whenever you opt into these systems is at this point, Flock has contracts with police departments across the United States, and originally all of our local Quad City police departments were opted into the entire network of Flock cameras, which span the United States, and that leads to issues across state jurisdictions. So any police officer that has access to the Flock network could theoretically access any of the department's cameras within the network. And so there were many instances of police misuse that happened in the years leading up to this, where there would be police officers that maybe they had their partner break up with them, and they were using the Flock network to stalk their partners. And stalk their partner's new boyfriends or stalk their partner's family members. So there was a lot of, and there still are a lot of instances of individual police officers' misuse of the system because it is so widespread. That, and I'll go over this in a bit, our Rock Island Police Department has done a lot of work in their policies to try to head off a lot of those issues of individual police officer misuse. Yeah. But my main issues with the entire system is we can do a lot of good in our community in Rock Island to make sure that our police officers are doing a good job. But at the end of the day, Flock runs the network. Flock is the one leasing us these cameras to install, and there is very little accountability of Flock themselves as a private company. They are not a government agency. They don't have to follow necessarily the rules of a government agency. Like if the city of Rock Island built cameras and set them up, they would be required to go through certain auditing processes that Flock doesn't, because they're a private company, and there's different rules for private companies versus government organizations.
Yeah, I listened to your comments at City Council, and then I've read this article that you've written that really reviews these issues, and I think you were, pretty intentional about separating out the police department from the technology. So it's not necessarily this case where there's some bad actor in the city of Rock Island who's searching or looking to misuse technology. It's that these technologies exist outside the kind of safeguards that a city might be able to put in place. And so once you sign on to a technology or sign a contract, you're kind of complicit with the way that company operates. For example, I could FOIA maybe something that the city has access to and is managing, and am I able to FOIA if a resident who lives in Rock Island traveled to another state, got into some trouble through the Flock system, would I be able to FOIA Flock? No, probably not. It's a private company. I don't.
So Flock does share some of its information with FOIA requests.
Okay.
That's part of the contracts they sign. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I won't get too far outside of my depth. But I will go as far as saying I know for a fact that the information that Flock was willing to share 3 years ago is not the same information that comes out of a FOIA request that they get today. So,
meaning they share less?
They share less
Okay.
than they did before. So the over the years, with a lot of the police misconduct examples that I brought up, as well as there have been a few examples of Flock employees misusing the cameras, that just there's been kind of repeated instances where Flock has gotten egg on their face that, and this is me reading into their intentions, they now give less information with FOIA requests than they did before. And I believe their stance is that it's to protect privacy of citizens is their reasoning why they give out less information. But I mean, I'll let the listeners judge that,
So you can see the good uses that are possible. You can see that when a city uses it, even if the city is doing a really good job, outside actors that the city can't control can still access that data.
Yeah.
Even nationally, Illinois is kind of a blue state, quote unquote. We might be engaged in certain practices that the rest of the country isn't engaged in. Like, do we have sanctuary cities in Illinois?
We did. I don't know. I don't actually know that is outside of my scope, because I'm not sure what qualifies it, and
And I'm not sure either.
The
but
label gets thrown around a lot. I know that.
Just kind of bringing that up. I know there were some examples in Lisle, Illinois, which isn't too far from us, where people who were attending protests were deemed as being problematic or something. So they were using this technology to kind of figure out where people who went to like a No Kings protest or a immigration protest, and that all they had to write, because I think Flock does require you put something in there to trigger your reasoning. They could put protest, or it could be just one word like stolen, or what do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I do. So Flock does require you to give a reason. There are police departments outside of Illinois that will recommend that officers be as vague as possible, because there have been instances where when an officer is specific, that it has come back to bite them. So in Texas, there was an instance where a woman left the state of Texas, came to Illinois, funnily enough, and was seeking abortion care. And the officer that was using the Flock network to find this woman, you said the purpose of the search was because she was searching abortion care, which would trigger this huge nationwide backlash, because Texas state laws around abortion care and Illinois state laws are different, and you have this cross-jurisdiction travel going on.
Well, and living on a river is so interesting, because in Iowa, we have a 6-week abortion ban, and in Illinois, we have more progressive access to health care for women. So you can see even just across a bridge. But this is from Texas, so go on.
Texas to Illinois. So this officer used a very specific query. In the reason why I'm using this Flock camera, it is because this woman broke a Texas law and was seeking abortion care. Since that time, the department, I believe, let that officer go or sanctioned that officer for other reasons, and then they have since, after the fact, said, no, the reason we were actually conducting the search was because it was a wellness check on this woman, and it was not related to the abortion care, even though, and this, again, comes up to a judgment call. The early correspondence was all around abortion care, and then I believe once it became a nationwide, focal point, because this is a cross-jurisdictional issue, it was reframed as a wellness check. So depending on who you believe, it's a he said, she said situation. But to your point, it is on the police departments how specific you should be in those queries. And I think, to give Rock Island Police Department credit again, every single Flock search that the Rock Island Police Department does is tied to a case number and has to be tied to a specific reason. So they have specifically gone out of their way to put restrictions on the use so that, an officer can't stalk an ex-partner unless they want to put that ex-partner, associated with some case number, an ongoing investigation. It's much harder to misuse the systems in those ways because of some of the restrictions that our department has put on those.
That's really good to know. Yeah, I was actually in thinking about this episode, because I posted a little bit about it, and some people have said, well, why would you want to cause problems or bring up complaints about anything that is helping to solve crime or helping to reduce crime? And so I'm not a person who has memorized the Constitution, but the reason this matters is because mostly of the Fourth Amendment, and that the Fourth Amendment says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And so what I hear you saying is that Rock Island has gone to formalize some process where they're being specific about, why are you using this technology? What crime is it linked to? And I think the Fourth Amendment protects us from warrantless, searches, but I did pull some of this case law because we have a reasonable expectation of privacy. There was this case back in 2012 where a police department, it's called United States versus Jones. A police department attached a GPS tracker to a car and monitored it for 28 days without a search warrant. And it was like a drug dealer who was leaving a club, and the police thought he was involved in drugs or something. And so initially this Jones guy said, I don't want you using that evidence in court because it was a warrantless search. And the first court said, no, we're going to use it. And so he appealed it, went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they found that there's this mosaic theory, which is that prolonged aggregated tracking differs constitutionally from a one-time observation. So once you can follow someone and follow their movements in this kind of coordinated way, it does in some ways become an unlawful tracking and an invasion of your privacy. There was another case, Carpenter versus the United States, looking at, do police need warrants to do extended cell site location pinging? I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but this is why it matters, because we're getting into my constitutional right or yours or anyone in Rock Island's right to reasonable privacy. And what are we willing to trade in terms of our rights to have security? And it's always a complicated kind of cost-benefit analysis. There's also First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, the right to associate. So when we're looking at tracking protests and who's there and creating a record of that, there was a case back in 1958, the NAACP versus Alabama, where the state found it could not compel disclosure of membership because it had a chilling effect on people getting together and coming together to protest or to affiliate, or that once you're being tracked, it stops those associations from happening.
Behavior changes.
And so there's also 14th Amendment. No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So this kind of really gets at equal protection and discrimination. If technologies are found to have an undue burden on a certain population, a certain part of town. I think in your article you kind of talked about giving the police department credit for putting these in entry points to the city.
Yes.
And I don't think you found that there was any, or maybe I'm misstating that, but you could see that if all the cameras were put in one area, for example, that could violate equal protection.
And there are cities where that is the case. I think our police department was very aware of a lot of the potential misuses of the cameras, specifically for targeting a certain area of the city, for example. And so from my perspective, it's basically wherever you are on a road that enters the city of Rock Island or leave. So if you're, down along the river, there's a whole bunch on that expressway. I forget the name of it, going down to the Sunset Marina and stuff. There's a number of them there, Centennial Bridge. And then basically anywhere where you can go from like Rock Island into Moline and back, there's a number of them there. So they don't.
Did you say we have 19? Or am I making that up?
I think so. It's around 20. I
Okay.
remember that. And there's a number of websites that are dedicated to tracking the cameras and even tracking, FOIA information around the cameras. So DFlock and then Have I Been Flocked, I think, are the two main websites.
No, what the flock?
There is a local David. There's Get the Flock Out QC
Okay.
is another one. That's a local. He's I believe he's from Moline, but he's trying to set up information around all the different QC
So many
flock
fun
stuff.
names.
Yeah,
You can come up with a flock,
yeah. There's a lot of fun wordplay you can do with the company name. Yeah, it's so the cameras are largely at least in Rock Island around the periphery. And this, I think, again, I'm gonna keep giving Rock Island Police Department their due, because there have been instances where, like, Flock does offer cameras that are specifically person tracking cameras, so you can put them on bike trails or within businesses or in malls and main thoroughfares. And we don't, as far as I'm aware, in Rock Island have any of those. And those have been even misused by Flock employees. There's an instance where Flock was, and this came out from a FOIA request, Flock employees were routinely pinging off of, it was a gymnastics, like it was like a gym in a synagogue and a swimming pool during times where there were like young children, like either exercising or swimming, and this was pinged like a number of times, a concerning amount of times, by Flock employees, not even by law enforcement. And so then Flock again was called out, like, hey, why is this going on? And they were like, oh, sorry, that was just for sales presentations. We were trying to sell this to different communities. And there's like some
Was that like a
verbiage.
Jewish community
It was,
center?
yeah.
Yeah, I read about that. That was interestingly odd.
It is, and one of the issues is because Flock is a private corporation, it again, it's very hard to audit them. So it's after, from my perspective, and this is me as a private citizen, after how many times with their hand in the cookie jar misusing their technology do we start questioning their motives or questioning whether we continue having a contract with these people? It's one of those things too, back to the Fourth Amendment. One of the reasons why, and kind of the elephant in the room with this discussion, is our phones do a lot to strip away a lot of the privacy that we think we have or think we ought to have. And that's because private corporations have a carve out for the Fourth Amendment. The government can't infringe on our privacy, but by having a phone that has location tracking and to use Facebook or any other social media platform, they collect a whole bunch of data on us, package it, and then sell it to other corporations. And that's kind of the business model that makes the internet work. So for the longest time, there's been a separate standard that we hold the government to than private corporations. And Flock exists as kind of a way to allow governments to get around and skirt around.
Outsource your...
Right. Because Flock is a private company. So they aren't necessarily beholden to the same rights or the same expectations of rights as a government entity would. And there's been a push from, Flock representatives and lobbying groups to essentially say, well, since private companies have been doing this for going on 2 decades now, it's a meaningless distinction to make the government uphold their standards because everyone's already so willing to get rid of their privacy. But one of the other things is too, if you have an Apple device and even Samsung devices, there's been a huge push for expanded privacy protections. So like I have a Galaxy phone. There's a number of things I can do to keep some of my data from going other places. You can limit the location data that's shared. You can limit the amount of data sharing that happens with the use of any of these apps. And so my response to that problem is, why don't we have more formalized digital privacy laws that protect everyone from being surveilled by everything?
Right.
Which is...
It's this idea of consent too.
Yes,
like
100%.
This might be a really weird analogy I just drew, but just because I consented to something over here doesn't mean that I give consent over here. And you see that a lot. I mean, I've counseled women so much about sexual assault. I mean, this is not at all the same thing, but just, well, you gave consent to this person or in this situation. Yep. So you're already giving consent. So why wouldn't you consent to have your privacy violated over here? Right. And just taking away that because I don't want my privacy violated over here and I get to decide. Also, like most of the time online, even though we're not reading all of it, you're signing up to play a game or you're trying to get a loan or you are clicking something to consent or you're agreeing to the terms. When you're driving down the street, you're not really doing that unless they embed it into the DMV or have some... Am I wrong on that?
No, I mean, yeah. From my perspective, yeah. I mean, it is, especially the precedent of the omnipresent surveillance of the GPS tracker case that you brought up. That is very clearly the issue with Flock. And I know one of our congressmen, I'm blanking on his name, even wrote a letter, our state congressman, that that Flock is in conflict with a lot of these privacy laws. And so Illinois has been trying to put restrictions on ALPR cameras generally. So the standards in Illinois are different than the standards in Iowa. Because one of the other issues that has come up is Flock has repeatedly stated that they don't have federal contracts with ALPR, with their access to their ALPR cameras, but ICE and other federal officials use Flock cameras pretty routinely, and they do it under the guise of partner police departments that do have access. So, like, I believe there was a Florida Conservation Police Department that, a federal agent was like, hey, can I have your login info? And that officer gave it. And once that login info is given, even under Flock's purview, well, that search was conducted by the Florida Conservation Police, even though it was used by the FBI or ICE or any of these federal agencies. So there's a loose... Ironically, it's very hard to track where some of the searches actually come from because the security standards of accessing Flock cameras is so flimsy.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're in state by state it's different.
Yes.
What Illinois can do versus what Florida or Texas, how much our government in Illinois allows us to communicate related to like ICE or that's and it's not one big sweeping action. I mean, I think a lot of the relationships between these technology companies and under Obama, after 9/11, it's like tons of little steps toward an increased state of being surveilled and federal, state, flimsy kind of oversight. Yeah. I mean, it's not something you can necessarily even point to, like at what step or which thing. It's like, no, it's just the snowball effect of...
And it's not necessarily a partisan issue either. Some of the earliest instances of ALPR cameras being used for this chilling of free speech and gathering were used in I believe it was the late aughts, early 2010s, and it was to surveil people that show up at gun shows, for example, which is typically, anyone can own a gun in this country, but that tends to be more of a conservative issue. And there are police departments that had set up ALPR cameras at the entrance to a gun show and logged every single attendee of the gun show, which, again, that could have a chilling effect on practicing yet another one of our constitutional rights, right to bear arms. And so not only has it been used to track people that show up at a No Kings protest, it is currently being used by certain police departments to track people that are speaking out against data centers in their communities as well. So people that attend protests of data centers, and there's language being used by certain communities saying that if you're against data centers, you might be associated with foreign governments. Yeah. Your Chinese agents is one accusation that's been come out, or maybe even domestic terrorists. And that is a label that gets thrown around a lot, but once your government officials are throwing that label around and they're tracking the people that participate in those activities, like you said, it's only a few more small slips of privacy before we have very, very concerning... 1984 didn't even conceive of this kind of surveillance apparatus.
Yeah, I mean, I personally am a little worried because, but there was this big presentation at the White House about the homelessness industrial complex and really tying the homeless advocates to domestic terrorists and a big talk on it. And those are things I care about. I care about homelessness. I care about immigrants. I'm kind of the poster child in my community for what could be considered whatever they're trying to label that as. And I just think about driving my car around in the winter, picking up homeless people, taking them safe places. Like, you could really be tracked. I think about going down to Century Woods a couple weeks ago, and no one was tracking me, but through Facebook comments, it's all public, so I'm not saying I'm being tracked. When I showed up, before I even got out of my car, the police were there to trespass me because the company is afraid of organizing. So we're not trying to do anything, but just how scary it can be to a government, to a company, to have 10 people be able to meet and raise their voices in such a little community and a little, the lengths to which some people will go to stop people from organizing. And so, I'm not a journalist, but I speak and talk about things, and just to be identified as like a troublemaker in your community, and then to know that people could, if they wanted to, track your movements. And in the United States right now, I still feel pretty free and comfortable and safe. And but I watched this thing, I think it was like a Time magazine, or I can't remember who produced it. But it was how these United States companies really set the infrastructure for China of all their surveillance state. So it's all the U.S. technologies and systems in a different country. You can see how this could limit all of your constitutional rights, if not carefully safeguarded. And it's like, who's in charge of that? It doesn't matter political affiliation, or it's like whoever ends up being in charge of it. Do you want to be a person who lives in a society on the other side of that? Like you said, it could be, oh, this administration doesn't like these people, but this administration doesn't like those people. And, how do you stay safe in that, or stay free? Or
And I think the biggest issue isn't necessarily, like you said, the partisanship of it. It is the act of surveilling a group of people heavily changes behavior, right? And if we really believe that we have a freedom of speech in this country, building an apparatus that tracks movement across places, if there are law enforcement agencies that partner with data brokers and buy a whole bunch of like our information that's tracked on social media and other places, like at a certain point, we lose our good faith ability to speak out on issues, because there's always going to be a voice in the back of the head. Well, what if I speak out about the wrong issue and then I get put on a list and then XYZ, right?
So it's weird to think about because I had a kind of weird thing happen around Century Woods. I'd invited this guy to share a story, and he did. And some of my posts have gotten a lot more traction in the last month, which is kind of, I don't know. It invites a certain element that isn't always like invested in community solutions. And so I found myself like trolling in the comments with another troll. I'm actually trying to work on a policy around this for myself in my comment section. But anyway, this guy from Geneseo threatened me. And I hid that comment, and I'm like, that I would love to know his license plate number and have a tracker on it and see if he makes the drive from Geneseo into Rock Island, And so you can see like, oh, if my child, like I said, if my kid was kidnapped, if someone was stalking me, like all the reasons I'd want a technology like that to protect me, but in the same hand, not want it to be used against me. And so almost having to like set up this fair rubric for like how much of that is too much. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. And the lack of oversight that social media in general has gotten in since it has been created has been a big frustration of mine. Like, so those interactions that you have on your social posts are a feature, not a bug of the platforms. Like the more controversy that can be generated in the comment section, the more interaction, the longer time you spend on the platform, the more ads you look at, which feeds into Facebook's model. So there is almost a group of people that have been, trained is the wrong word, incentivized to churn up controversy and just anger. Like there's been a number of psychological studies that have looked at the motivations, the incentive structures of social media, get people churned up into a frenzy, and it almost doesn't matter. Like there's a disconnect between thinking, oh, there's another person on the other end of this screen, so like if you look at any, and I've seen it, not just on your posts, any posts on Facebook, there's always one person that is just overly critical, and then there's an even worse brand of that where they are always levying personal threats.
Yeah.
And a certain percentage of those personal threats are genuine personal physical threats. But there's a certain mental cost of trying to weigh what's a genuine threat, what's not, because it's and not to get too off on a tangent, but we have ceded regulating those spaces, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as a country.
That's what I've been like wrestling with this so much the last 3 weeks, and I've been trying to write something about it. So maybe you can help me think through it a little bit. But yeah, so for me, I didn't have a lot of comments on my posts. And then I just had a couple random ones get a lot of attention. And that was the thing that like invited all these, what I will call trolls. Because I'm working on this piece. It's called In a World Full of Trolls Be a Tomta, which is like a Swedish Christmas gnome.
Yeah.
And this idea, but it's not just for the people who have come on my site and had bad behavior, because I will get pulled into bad behavior.
Right.
And so it's also like for myself to really sit with that. Yeah. But what I felt myself wrestling with was this example that happened was like so weird, because this man comes on, he shares his story, people come after him. I have never been a bystander my entire life. If someone's getting bullied at school or on the street or at the grocery store, like I am that weird person that steps in. I would be like, hey, you can't treat her like that, or it's not right the way that this is, it's like a core feature of my personality.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So people start coming for him. I feel myself get activated, and this part of me that wants to like defend him. And then I'm like, well, let him, he's a grown man. He can fight his own battle here on Facebook. So I have this friend that I went to high school with who jumps in there to kind of also try to defend him. We're kind of similar creatures. And he calls her a dumb bitch. And there's this whole backstory, because he's from Geneseo, doesn't live in Rock Island, but is so happy. Like, it's a lot of these peripheral people who don't live in our city who want to come in and talk about Rock Island. And it like gets me, Atticus. I get so worked up. But he calls her a name, and I'm immediately like 15 again, because this same friend, we went to play basketball in Geneseo as high schoolers. We're walking into the gym, kind of get off the bus, and are walking in, and this little girl holding her mom's hand points at my friend and says, "Look, mommy," an N-word. And it was like devastating for her, for our team, and so I bring all this history and baggage to this conversation. So this man does that, and I say, why don't you come have this conversation at Century Woods? I'll meet you there. And I didn't mean like to fight you. And I private messaged him, like, we can set up chairs, we can have, because I'm so curious about the psyche of someone who just wants to throw judgment and to shame people. And it's a silencing technique. It's like, I don't know the psychology of it. Like, I think it's part, if I can make people feel so bad about themselves that all the problems that exist for them are of their own making, that poverty is the sole responsibility of the individual experiencing it, that I can shut them up, that they won't, rise up or fight for themselves or think they deserve more. I don't know if it's on the flip side, people who need to feel big. And so the only way to do that is to put other people down, to say, because I wanted to ask him, like, has anyone ever helped you? Did anyone pay for your college? Did you feel safe in your neighborhood? Could you walk down the street and feel... Like, I wanted to have a conversation and had messaged him, and he didn't show up. As I'm sitting there, my stomach starts to turn. Like, I knew people, I wasn't alone. But I'm like, I'm an idiot. this is so unsafe. I shouldn't be doing this. I'll never do this again. But I also kind of like knew he wouldn't show up. So I need a policy for myself. But it's like part of what I wanted to do on the Rock Island line was have real conversations. And even the podcast, I've realized over time, like only certain people want to have conversations. Every person I've challenged through my work, I've invited here. A lot of like the people who have called me out, I've private messaged them and I say, would you like to come on the podcast and talk about this? You know, city council people, the person I criticized for talking about the unhoused, our old city clerk who's criticized me on my Facebook. I've been like, come on my podcast and let's talk about it. I'm not like trying to literally fight anyone.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
I don't know, Atticus. So so the troll there's a certain type of troll, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, called a stalo, which is like northern Swedish troll. And they literally like suck your life force from a metal pipe, from an iron pipe from afar.
Okay.
And this idea of trolling is like to work people up to get a response, but not to give anything back to the community. Right. You're not there to protect it. You're not there to be a part of the solution. Right. And so I'm trying to work out like a policy for like, if you were in my living room and said to my friend or threatened someone, I would tell you to get out of my house. Yeah. I wouldn't sit quietly while you were. So I might like remove those people or hide them if they repeatedly are just there to be destructive. Yeah. Now, a tomta, which is the little Swedish, is in Swedish tradition is like a little character, like a mythical creature, kind of looks like a troll, but it's there to protect the land. It lives in the house. It's not out in the forest like a troll. It's not far away. And it gets angry, but it gets angry in order to preserve boundaries and to keep people safe and to like protect the home. I kind of feel like Rock Island is my home. Sure. The people of Rock Island. And yeah, I'm just like psychologically like trying to figure this out. What do you think, Atticus?
I think
Can I limit speech on my own platform?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say one of the things, especially as the Rock Island line grows, it's important to have a self-policy around that, because the incentives of the platforms, you know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, what have you, are to churn up more controversy as your platform expands. And so there's a lot of people that will chase engagement, right? Because if you were to have met with that person and it would have been a fiery exchange, that would have gotten a lot more engagement, and it would have continued. It would be a self-perpetuating spiral where, so it wouldn't just be one person from, you know, Geneseo. You might get 4 more people, you know, it would feed into itself. So I think it's really healthy to have going in knowing what your own personal barriers are around, like, all right, here's
I'm
what
a fiery person.
Yep, right.
I got to hold myself back.
Yeah, 100%. And the platforms themselves aren't going to help. They are only going to feed more as more people engage with the Rock Island line. It's going to feed you more and more people that everyone's willing to give their opinion, and some are just want to get a rise out of people, and then some aren't even real, as we also know.
Yeah, it's the same people, and they've found me now.
Yeah.
And they just come on there. Like somebody posted about the farmers market, and it was such a beautiful event the second Saturday. Yep. People were blowing bubbles, and a guy uploaded videos. It was very sweet. And then this kind of repeat person they forgot the word ghetto above Rock Island. And you can like find, I'll click on those people and I'll be like, where do you live? And like, who are you? Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, because this is all very concealed, your profile. And so I hid it, but I haven't put my policy out yet. But I'm like, I want people who want to be part of the solution, which could include rigorous debate. It could include challenging each other. I don't see myself ever blocking someone who's like, I fundamentally disagree with you because of these 5 points, but people who just want to be negative, like kind of racist and not kind of racist and
100%
misogynistic. And what I see them doing is standing on a box so that they can feel tall. You know, it's smoke and mirrors. This is how I feel big. It's supremacy in a way. It's like how I feel supreme is to, so I think as much as I am a free speech person, I don't really have to allow dehumanization and I don't want those kind of clicks. I don't care.
Right. And I would also, again, and I'm very much, from my perspective, I very much am critical of the platforms. So that one person that commented on your post, them interacting with your post then gave a signal to the algorithm that, oh, people of this demographic are willing to interact with your content. So that then fed into more. So the platform itself, it brings people. So they may not even follow Rock Island Line, but because that person commented on one of your posts one time and probably had a back and forth with you, so commented multiple times, then all of that demographic data of that initial commenter got fed into the algorithm like, oh, these people are more likely to interact with your content. And so Facebook's just going to keep feeding
Wow.
people like that from, different places, locally or not, into, and if you were, and again, Facebook has said that they are not accountable for anything that they're the product of their algorithm, even though we know, it is an unfortunate fact that comes from 2 decades of not regulating social media and allowing them to feign ignorance about the consequences of how all of their systems work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess if you're like a politician, it would be limiting free speech if you started.
Yep, that's what the social media companies say. Yeah, you can't limit our free speech to control discourse.
Yeah. But on my page, I can treat it like my living room.
Right.
Like if you started telling me you were going to hurt me in this room right now, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And so that's where I personally, the rhetoric around all of these corporations being free speech absolutists is complete BS. Because like we all moderate the discussion
if someone
in our
walked
lives.
into their physical building at Meta and started threatening all of them, they wouldn't let them just sit there and keep doing it.
No, it's ridiculous on the face of it. So turning, something like Twitter into, 4chan with more users, that doesn't, I don't know.
But the monitoring, I mean, I think that in some ways is what we're talking about is this policy responsible, whether it's in our own lives or for a city. I mean, I could envision some sort of a commission that focuses on adaptation of technologies. I mean, I think that across the country, probably that might become more relevant for cities, and having people like you who have, the knowledge and expertise and interest to just, the city's adopting a new policy. Let's just look at it. I took us on a big tangent, but the other one I was looking into is that Celebrate, I think it's called, and we already have a contract, and it basically can scrape your phone with a warrant. It's not like they can just pick your phone up and it's probably an extremely useful technology, but it takes everything, every location, every face, it can take all your data. And where I think it's mostly useful is helping find maybe child pornography distributors. So again, it's like, well, as a mother, I love that technology. And the company that creates it in other countries does a lot of activity with it that isn't subject to a warrant. And that is included to limit journalists, to limit people fighting for human rights, and are we required as a city to care about what companies do in other spaces and if that's ethical? I don't know.
Yeah. And that comes with another concern I haven't mentioned yet. And that is just around the consolidation of data. So one of the issues, and this is something that's affected my professional life. So if anyone is aware, Canvas, which is an LMS or a learning management system, a whole bunch of high schools and colleges use
I read
Canvas.
about that. Yeah.
And it was compromised. Some hackers got access to the data. And so this kind of thing happens all the time where a corporation or a banking system or something gets hacked. Hospital systems have been very key targets as well. Any of these systems where there's an entity that contracts with a larger corporation to facilitate digital management of some form. And the more data that is collected and stored by these third parties, the more at risk you are as an individual entity. So Canvas was hacked, and then a ransom was paid back to the hackers, and they pinky promised that they gave us all the data back. And or us, I have nothing to do with it. Canvas was given all of their data back, but they facilitate all of this personally identifiable information for students across the country at all these different institutions that use it. And so whenever you have an instance where there's an extreme consolidation and cataloging of data, especially private data, that is a risk factor. And Flock, as I've previously mentioned, and you can read the article to see the list of security concerns with Flock. Like, they've accidentally allowed public access to a number of their cameras before, just on the internet. You could just click into any of the streams of any of the cameras. That was able to go on for a number of weeks before Flock was able to shut that down. I think a few weeks ago, you could access the full logs of searches of some of the cameras through a Google search. Like, if you just put in the right words, you could access the back end of some of the cameras and see every single search that was queried.
Wow.
All of the personally identifiable information of the people that were being searched.
Wow.
And so there's a history here, because Flock spun up very quickly over a short period of time, that and their security standards aren't what you would, I'll use me, I'll put myself out there, what I would hope from a company that has access to as much data as they do. And so there's a liability issue for us as a city, as a community, as a Quad Cities area, since all of the local Quad City metro area police departments have Flock contracts of some kind. There could come a day when Flock is compromised, and then all of our data of where we've all been traveling over the last however long gets, something bad happens to it. And then that can be used, because in these instances where a whole bunch of data is hacked, they can just release that. And once that data is released, Flock themselves have used hacked data to help build their systems. There's I forget the name of it. If you park in any of the parking garages over in Davenport, there's like an app that you can use. Well, that data was compromised a few years ago. And Flock used that compromised data around vehicle information to help train their systems, because once it was released by the hackers, they considered it public information.
Wow.
Once that was pointed out, again, like Flock typically will do, they then said, okay, we removed that data, we're not using it anymore. But there were discussions around building a system trained on that hacked data. So it's these layers of obfuscation. And if you collect data and house it in a centralized place, like Flock's databases, that's a risk area for any community that contracts with Flock.
Yeah, it's so, ugh. And I was kind of telling you before we got on today, like, so you had this example at work. And for me, I work in the therapy world, and we have an electronic health record that we adopted years ago. And then, like everything, they unveiled like a AI note taker. So the client has to consent to it. They fill out a consent form. You can't just record your client.
Right.
Although I was at the doctor the other day, and she's like halfway through, she's like, oh, I'm using this. There's someone on this screen over here. And I could see her face then. And she was doing all the notes. I'm sure I consented to it in some form. Sure. But anyway, I don't use it, but I have clinicians who have signed up for it. And it's extremely helpful for clinicians, especially who struggle with like maybe time management or getting their notes done. And so when they initially rolled it out, it was like it takes a note. It keeps it in there for only like 7 days. And once you sign your note and take the data, that it doesn't use names or anything, but it does do a pretty detailed description of a session. Right. To me, it makes me uncomfortable. And I train all my clinicians to like minimize that. Sure. Like whatever it writes in there, make it 17 times shorter. Sure. I'm very vague in my notes, having always realized that someone could maybe access them through a hack, or I don't know. Sure. It's all encrypted. It's like very medically secure, but that doesn't matter, as we've seen in other examples. But so what they do then, people get used to it. It's so helpful. And just in the last 2 weeks, they're like, well, now we're actually going to hold on to the notes. We're going to de-identify them. Yep. Don't worry. No one will be able to tell who that is, or we're going to scrub it of any identifying information, but we're going to hold on to that. Most likely to train AI therapists and really like the best therapy practices and the people who are getting the best outcomes. And for some reason, in some ways for my field, it's cool to think about, would you be able to see the types of interventions in this really centralized way that make the most impact on people's mental health. Right. But also it's like so that you can teach a robot how to replace me. It's like, yep. But with all these technologies, it's like Facebook or your phone. It's like you get used to it. And then the thought of taking it away feels painful. Yeah.
And that is another thing we talked about beforehand. That is the model that Flock is looking to take advantage of, is to try to make themselves invaluable to our police departments before court cases are able to go through. You know, there is theoretically a day when maybe I'm not optimistic enough to think Flock as a whole would be ruled as illegal because of how ingrained they already are. But if there's some aspect about how Flock operates that is ruled illegal by the Supreme Court or by some courts or by the state of Illinois, for example, once it gets ingrained and our police officers use it so frequently, what does it look like to take it away? Or what does it look like when Flock starts asking a little bit more a year? You know, Netflix doesn't cost the same as it did when it started. You know, now there's all these ad tiers and stuff like that. That is the business model that Flock operates. It's a Silicon Valley subscription-based tech company. So they are trying to give us more and more systems as a community that we start to rely on. Maybe we start opting to, well, we have Flock, so we don't have to hire that other officer or that other city employee. And then a day may come when Flock doubles their ask of the city.
Yeah.
Now what does the city do in that instance? They can't get the person back, or now Flock has become so ingrained in the workflows of the city.
That's such a, like, one of the tasks, I think, of any sort of board or commission that would look at this would also be to look at the cost benefit of these technologies. So, you know, we bought some technology that is supposed to help the Community Economic Development Department run their CDBG grant. You know, it does all these things where it advertises that it will save your city money because you're not going to have to pay health insurance or benefits or why do you need all those people in that department if you've got this cool software that can write grants for you? And then do we ever see the reduction in staff? So we have this cool technology that does all the work and we're still paying.
Sure.
That's an interesting question. And how much does the city want to replace humans with technology? Are we thinking about that? Are we thinking about the impact on our city? If we could have, I'm such a nerd, and Chief McLeod is pretty patient with me. And I was like, we need to like get the kids to build like a robot that could do all the traffic stops because those are most dangerous sometimes for a police officer and young people. So if you have like a teen driver and you could deploy a little robot dog that would go up to the side of the car with a little iPhone, iPad screen and do the initial interchange from a distance. And could that keep young drivers safe? Could it keep police officers safe? But I think the tricky part of that is then are you eliminating the role of humans?
Right.
I don't know. And I don't know how I feel about that because I don't want anyone taking my job.
For sure. And I will give a shout out to Chief McLeod. He has been incredibly responsive to my concerns and my emails. I think, you know, in my personal opinion, just from my limited interactions with him, he was always willing to, if not share, overshare, you know, like just give me a whole bunch of information to work off of. Any questions I had, I think the first time I emailed him wasn't even about Flock. It was about the Rock Island Police Department got a new drone, and I noticed it at, I think it was the Pride Parade last year. And so I just, you know, I was newly invigorated and wanting to be civically minded thanks to being on the Rock Island line. So I just shot an email to Chief McLeod, and I think the Rock Island Police Department has like a contact email, and he responded with, here's all of our policies, here's where we use it, here's when we use it. And he seems very conscious and very intentional with a lot of the implementations of these technologies, which I think is commendable and to the benefit for our whole community. And I would say that we are one of the better, you know, and I haven't looked that deeply at the other cities in the Quad Cities, but he does good work around making sure that there's at least guardrails around the Rock Island police officers' use of a lot of these surveillance technologies or technologies where there could be misuse.
Yeah. I think being willing to communicate and sharing information goes such a long way in a city. I've had interactions and kind of back and forth with lots of our different police leaders since the time I was in high school. And I really do think that Chief McLeod, I don't know if he would say he ever agrees with me, but in some ways it's like being willing to share information and to talk and to have a relationship with is so important. You know, I FOIA'd some stuff in Davenport because I'm doing this piece on business assistance. And so one of the businesses that we funded was also funded in Davenport.
Okay.
And Davenport has started to charge big dollars for FOIA releases. Like, I think I paid $200, I don't remember how much it was, to get the records.
Sure.
And I was like, oh my God, I hope Rock Island never does that. And how can you do that? How can you stop your public from getting information?
It's that is so I can come with a librarian perspective for that. That is the forever conflict of FOIA requests, because there's a certain cost to whatever entity is providing the documents to.
I'm taking full responsibility for our city clerk's raise because she deserves it. Because they're like, our FOIA in the last city council, they were like, our FOIA requests have really increased in the last, I'm like, is that me?
Yeah. And there is a cost associated with that, but there's also, again, a chilling effect if you just pass a cost onto the people that want a FOIA request, because now that's a barrier to accessing public information. It's a push and pull because it can be weaponized. So I'm not saying you, but there are public libraries where, there are places, and this may surprise the listener, that librarians are, characterized as demon worshippers and, corrupting the children. It's groomers and the like is a term that gets thrown around a lot. But one of the easiest ways to go through a library budget is to just spam them, like send tens of FOIA requests for unnecessary information, and it overwhelms the staff. It starts accruing a cost over time. So you do that as well as, either taking books off shelves and not returning them, or etc.
Wow.
Because, library budgets aren't what other city entities' budgets are. So that I am well aware how FOIA requests can be used maliciously, but also they play an incredibly important role in democracy, in the open spread of information. So any barriers to getting that information are problematic for the similar reasons to all this surveillance stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. And they're so last time we talked, I had not really used AI a lot, like ChatGPT or Claude or any of that. So I really kind of have used it more. And I would say the biggest place I've used it is to help me draft FOIA requests.
Oh, sure.
Because some of the language you want, and it's really specific. And I've done some FOIAs now of more like federal programs that interact with the city. And it seems a little bit stricter, or like you have to be more precise in your language than communicating with the city of Rock Island. And another place I'll give our city great heaps of credit is Amanda Torres, our city clerk, has been so responsive. I'm sure I annoy her. She's probably like, oh God. But when I ask for information, I feel like I get it. And there have been a couple places maybe where there's been something sticky, but for the most part, like when I did the preschool thing, I wanted to know about text messages between the person who was bidding for something and the staff. And the way they do that is they just send a message out, do you have any text messages that pertain to this topic? And everyone was like, no. And I'm like, well, is that sufficient? But, but for the most part, I feel like, but that's one place I've used a lot of AI. And then I also used it to help me write an article about the place where maybe ICE is operating in downtown Rock Island.
Yes.
So I wanted to get this article out. There was this like deportation data project, but I was like working on other things. And so I had it basically help me write an article. And then I put a little flag at the end of it. Sure. Like I used AI to write this article because I don't know how to, should you tell people if you're going to use?
I would. So, yes. I would say that is probably, there's no real standard yet in terms of like what we will teach our students at Blackhawk is disclosure first. So there are classes where you can use AI for some part of the assignments. And as long as you cite the AI or at least disclose, yeah, I used AI for this purpose, or, that's kind of, and, there are classes where you can't use AI for certain assignments. It varies class by class, discipline by discipline. But I would say disclosure is always better than not, because there's a, you would hate to, there, and this is kind of a secondary issue, AI and the use of it, there's a lot of baggage, and one of those places of conflict that you see is there's a lot of people that are very against the use at all on ethical grounds of AI, because of the proliferation of data centers.
My kids are like, Mom, you can't use AI. It's taking the water.
Yeah. We're since our last talk, the number of students coming into Blackhawk vehemently against the use of AI has grown.
Yeah.
A lot.
The kids don't like it.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense if you think about these are the people that are entering the workforce that if you turn on the news at any point, X company has laid off X amount of employees because of AI. And if you look at the positions that are affected by AI, it's entry-level job. It's the busy work that would typically have been done by an intern or a first-year employee before they're given their quote-unquote real work or the more substantial work. So if we're raising the ladder behind us, or I'm not in charge of any, but if corporations are raising the ladder and not allowing young people to enter the workforce, and all of them are saying it's because of AI, I mean, I also would be, that's I think a logical stance to take if it looks like all these corporations are selling you down the river.
Yeah. And what job is out there for me?
Right.
What job's going to be waiting for me? Like, my kid wants to maybe do occupational therapy. And I was like, oh, actually, that's probably kind of in the next upcoming generations, an AI resilient career choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you wonder if those, okay, but I have two more points about,
yes.
because I keep getting distracted because you're fun to talk to. One is this Raven program that is kind of like an update to the Flock software that we adopted. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So like any good Silicon Valley tech company, there's always an upgrade that is offered. So right now, or before the Raven software, City of Rock Island had the base kind of just Flock cameras that monitor cars, license plates, and that other identifying information. So we didn't have and I'm not gonna remember all of Flock's different, but like the ones that are person tracking that go on like bike trails or walking paths or main thoroughfares. We didn't have that. But they do offer an attachment and upgrade to the Flock cameras that essentially sticks a microphone on it and monitors audio in the same ways that cars are monitored.
Just a continuous audio monitoring.
So all of the cameras have, and I believe it's a trial period. So the main reason I wanted to come on now is the City of Rock Island is, their contract is up in the next few months. I believe it's like early 27 is when it's up. So if anyone cares about this, reach out to the Rock Island City Council and let them know if you're for or against it. But we are trialing in addition to the Flock cameras that originally the technology is for gunshot detection. So it's constantly recording, and if there's gunshots, that can send a ping to our police department, and they can be there theoretically quicker than if someone heard it, or someone on one of the Facebook pages, did anyone hear that, and then it slowly gets back to, so theoretically it's a more efficient way for the police department to respond to instances of gunshot. Flock themselves have started marketing the Raven software as being also able to detect sounds of distress. So if like someone's arguing next to the Flock camera, or like someone is yelling help or some sound of distress, theoretically, they claim that the camera microphone can pick that up and, also create a ping. I don't know how well that would work. And this is completely from a non-academic perspective. I've seen a whole bunch of content. So it's the same kind of technology. I don't think any of our I can't speak to that. High schools have what's called anti-bullying monitors that can go into bathrooms specifically because there aren't teachers or hall monitors in bathrooms.
Yeah.
And it also are microphones that pick up sounds of distress. Now, I am uncomfortable at the prospect of having microphones that are always recording minors in bathrooms for any reason. But theoretically, if someone is in a bathroom, bullying another student, it would create a ping, and that would let admin know, like,
or with
hey,
a really bad stomach ache. I can think of someone being in distress for other reasons.
Well, and what the content that I've seen is there's a number of kids that like try to trigger it, like just to see, because it makes this like bright red light, and so they will like yell ridiculous things into the microphone to get it to, because they're teenagers. But that is so non-specific, sounds of distress, and we're also adding another component to the surveillance. So I'm less concerned around the microphones in Rock Island simply because of where our cameras are located. They are located not in main thoroughfares. They're located around the periphery of the city. So any sounds of distress, like no one is going to be like on the expressway, like having a private conversation under the flock cam.
Yeah.
Like that is not... So again, Chief McLeod and the department's decisions around the location of the cameras has again proven to assuage some of the concerns around it. But the technology itself is, again, to my original points, a little concerning just from the flock.
And it's kind of that slippery slope.
Yes.
So once everyone becomes really comfortable with it, and then maybe there is an area that's higher crime, and it's like, well, it would make sense to put one here. And you could see the rationale for that.
Right.
But then it might be that people's reasonable expectation of privacy is violated because now you have someone listening, and then maybe they make them less visible. So you're not quite sure where they are. I don't know how it would unfold. But I do know there's some sort of lawsuit because they've gone off for fireworks.
Yes, they have. Yep.
They've gone off for a backfiring car. Yep. And then there was one case where I think police did end up shooting a young person in maybe Chicago or I can't remember where. Yeah. Because then you're coming to the encounter with this idea that there's been gunfire here, which just escalates. Yep. So I know there have been some concerns like that I think Evanston in Illinois got rid of their technology because one, and I don't know if this is backed up by fact, but one of their city councilors, I think, said that in 99% of the alerts, there was no outcome. There was no actionable or... So are you paying more to have police officers responding to these things that, at least according to Evanston, Illinois, 99% of the time were not valid? And then you're coming into the interaction like, has there been gunfire here? Which is one of the most dangerous and kind of excitatory reasons that a police officer has to respond to something.
And that is the real cost to any offloading of police work to these technologies is... you are offloading them to technologies that cannot be relied upon 100% of the time. So as I mentioned previously about my family member that got the New Jersey ticket, there have been people that have had to spend months in prison because a face recognition AI system identified them as being a part of a violent crime or part of a crime that they didn't commit. And the police officers involved in those situations overly relied on the AI technology. And so there's a real cost to handing these responsibilities over to fallible and not always accurate technologies. And
I think it's actually been researched that those facial recognition technologies are shown to not recognize Black and Asian faces with the same level of certainty or
Correct.
like,
Yep, it is. There's a large amount of scholarship and research that has gone into the systemic reasons why basically all AI technologies are racist might be the wrong way. They are racially biased based on their training data. So there's one thing that we see in academia is English as a second language students are disproportionately flagged by AI plagiarism detectors. So there are these technologies that will look at a body of text and try to look for markers of AI text. almost all of the markers of AI text also, just in the writing style, also show up in people that speak English as a second language. So almost every AI technology that you come across for one reason or another has racial components, whether it was intentional or not, it shows up in all of them. So facial recognition has a harder time identifying non-white faces. There's a number of other...
I'm just thinking of like volume. Like if you have this thing on the street that's detecting voices and you have a culture that's very quiet or a culture that is louder, even that could be like, oh, people are louder in this part of town, so they must be causing trouble, which is,
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of scholarship as well on like where you, to your point, where you choose to put these devices, right? So and this has been shown over and over again, if you put stuff like these flock cameras in parts of town that are higher crime, well, they're going to continue seeing higher crime because that's where the cameras are.
Right.
Like it's a Ouroboros. Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling thing. Because there have been a number of studies where it's like, well, if you're equidistant with the distribution of these, it doesn't vary that much in certain communities. But because there's a reputation of certain parts of the community having higher crime or needing more surveillance, well, it's going to continue feeding into itself because you can't, we live in a community, not a scientific experiment.
And I was kind of conversing with someone online about this who was very pro flock cameras. One thing I kind of pointed out was like, it's just interesting to me that we're having all these kind of on the street surveillance techniques amped up and, immigration and very out in the public, like at the same time that we've really decreased our financial crimes surveillance and, audits through the IRS have gone way down. And I know those entities also have sophisticated technology that can scan things, and I'm sure it's in a totally different way. But crypto being this untrackable, untraceable currency that is gaining in popularity. So it's like, it also just, to me, when you're focused on people that are found out and about, committing crimes where you're outside and it's visible to the world, is almost a more, I don't know if desperate is the right word, but it's a different population than people who are committing more sophisticated, hidden, huge scale crimes that
have more of a broader impact. Right?
Yeah. Like flock can't pick up that I'm not paying my taxes or that I'm not paying them fairly. There's probably other technology that can, but I think data from budgets and how we're spending is like the only financial crime we're going after aggressively right now is that of nonprofits in blue states. So we've been, but tech bankers are not, I don't know. So I think there can be strange, what kind of crime? What's the focus on? Obviously, we're not using this software to uncover who really hurt children in the Epstein files, or it's like, if only there was a flock camera for a jet flock camera on Epstein Island. But these will be, and I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just saying what you're saying. Like, you could see how, like with any technology, it's how good is it in the hands of the user and who's using it. And can we create a container where you'd feel relatively comfortable with the trade-offs, whether you like who's using it, you don't like them, they like you, they don't like you, I think we've seen more, I don't know, like you don't want to be on the wrong side of someone. And that feels different than I was when I was like a little kid, but maybe because I was just ignorant child. But
well, the other thing, and this is, I'm being a little facetious when I say this, but like one thing that would go a long way is if we were contracting with a company where we had access to the data, the servers and everything, and it was a closed loop, encrypted, end-to-end encrypted system that just existed in Rock Island or even the Quad Cities. If there was no middleman to facilitate what data we have access to, I would still think that is an invasion of privacy, surveillance, but it at least wasn't relying on this third party to be on best practices, right? There's even like, it's the difference between something like Ring, which is a part of this nationwide Amazon-controlled, server, And then you can also get like little doorbell cams that are a closed loop where you have access to the data that's housed on them. And the fact that there isn't really an alternative that does that, I think tells you a little bit of something about the business model of these companies. Like there have a number of cities that have voted to remove flock cameras, and the cities have stopped paying Flock. They're like, yep, we're ending our contract. And Flock refused to remove the cameras until the city covered them with the garbage bag, which tells you everything you need to know about the business model of Flock, in my opinion.
Or they had like uninstalled them, and then a couple days later, it was like reinstalled.
Yep.
And that's weird.
It is. And it shows that the value that Flock gets from the cameras, yes, there's a monetary, like each community pays Flock however many thousand a year, but also the data itself, the network itself, and what's being collected is a value to Flock.
With so many things now, it's like we're giving away the value and then it's being sold back to us.
Yes.
So when they talk about, AI and learning models as being a utility, we'll like buy back our intelligence.
Yep. Sam Altman, he says he wants to meter out AI, or meter out intelligence to people. They'll pay it like a utility. That's the head of OpenAI, the ChatGPT developer.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, we have this conversation, and we're going to upload it on the internet, and maybe AI will stumble across it and scrape it of its data, and then we'll buy it back from ourselves.
That's the business model.
And my wonderful therapists will do these great interventions, and they'll train. It's so interesting. It does give more credence, I think, to this idea that the public should own the utilities, or socialism is really gaining steam right now. I saw some national poll that like the number of people who are open to it has really increased. And but this like public utility of our own brains, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, I personally am leaning into AI more. Also for some things I'm kind of working on the side around maybe an app for people who are tenants. Most of the apps for tenants are actually for landlords. So trying to figure out like how do you utilize technology. I'm trying to like teach myself a little bit of coding, but it's really, really hard, and I don't feel that smart. But yeah, I don't think there's any way of like, I don't think I'll be a person who's like, I'm just not going to engage with it at all.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of privilege that comes from being able to opt out of technology, right? So much of society is as someone that worked in a public library and has helped people, it's hard to rent an apartment today without, you can't really go up to the landlord and sign like a paper. Like it's very hard to do it entirely devoid of having access to technology. So much of the work, like you hear about, like Christopher Nolan, the director, he's like, oh, I don't have a smartphone. It's like, yeah, but your intern does, and she does all of your, or your assistant, whoever. Like, there's a certain amount of, to participate actively in society today, you need to opt into a certain amount of this. And completely ceding that means that you're accepting that it's a lost cause, and all of these bad outcomes are inevitable, and they should just be allowed to happen. Like,
yeah, I think that's such a fascinating point, because a lot of the tech people didn't let their kids use technology but that is really a privilege to be able like, I'm just going to unplug. I'm set. I don't need to engage with, that is a really good point. I had not thought about it that way. Even as you're talking about this, I'm just like, at Century Woods, there's like a system that tells them how much income everyone's making based off of their social security numbers. There's a system for everything. Like we're in these systems in all these ways that we don't even know. Or I helped a guy who got a bad credit report, even though he didn't deserve it, and we got it cleared up for him. But he was in a system that was basically stopping him from renting, because all the landlords use some system where once you put your info in, it's like, oh, this person had
blacklist them.
And they're not always accurate, and it's really hard for people to get it changed. And all these helpful yet hurtful, and if you're a person who doesn't have an attorney or power, to challenge your relative
Yeah.
who had to take time and energy, and if it wouldn't have worked, he might have had to sue. It's like, oh gosh.
Yeah, and this is, the most recent example that I can think of this is there's been findings coming out that when you're applying for a job, a lot of these companies use the same AI resume screeners as each other. And so if you get denied by one job, any other company that uses that AI resume screener will just blacklist you.
Oh my
so you'll hear
God.
these stories about people that, I've applied for 100, 200 jobs and I'm not hearing back. And it's like, well, you might have been denied your resume through one of these AI systems. And then that system puts you in a bucket of like, all right, this is not an ideal candidate or not a...
Wow.
And it essentially even, that's just how the system works.
Yes.
And then there's been some reporting on that. And it's like, again, yet another reason for the younger generation to be very angry and upset with AI, because like you can apply for jobs all day and it's not like, you could go down to the corner store and be like, hey, here's my resume, sir, hand it to whoever, the manager, and like, it's just a different system. And again, to the point, you can't opt out of the technology there because it's on the receiving end.
The thing that's most recently happened to me with both of my banks is I've gotten returned mail here to work. I open it and it's a check from me to a random person that I don't know. Oh my goodness. And it's my bank account and it's my signature and it's not a real check. They're trying to I don't know what they're trying to do or how they're going to do it, but you can get the digital images. So someone probably intercepted a check of mine in the mail. And so they were able to pull off my signature, pull off my check numbers, create new checks with these little seals that make them look professional.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm working with both of my banks on that. Someone's stealing my mail. But anyway, it's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything. Wow. But so what can people do? You had mentioned... Come to a city council meeting or
I would say I would say the most helpful thing is, as we're getting close to the contract renewal, if you have thoughts on this, whether you are someone who maybe your stolen car was returned and you are like, yep, I like the flock cameras, keep them, or if any of this conversation concerns you, reach out to the city council. They've been very receptive to my conversations with them, and just let them know where you stand. I think with a lot of things around this surveillance, or just anything with city council, they don't know if it's an issue unless people talk to them. So as long as you're, respectful and, brief and, don't yell at them, obviously. I would, make your voices heard, participate in democracy, be civic minded, thanks to the Rock Island Line like I was. And I'm mostly coming on here just to try to be educational, inform people about the issue. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. It's fun to think maybe next year, what will we be talking about? Right. There will be some new technology where it's think we can guess what it would be. What would be the next wave of? Yeah.
The thing that I'm getting more and more concerned about is just the cost of hardware components of technology that have gone up related to data centers and their proliferation. That's probably my next is data centers. I've been following Clinton's situation pretty closely. They've been, and I don't know if we have the acreage here in little old Rock Island to facilitate a data center, but I know Davenport has a plot of land that's already been zoned for, I think it's a med data center. I don't want to speak out of turn on that, but it's out near the Fairmont branch of their public library, kind of out past there. And so I think data centers are going to continue to become more and more of an issue, especially here in the Midwest, because we have land and the companies just need land and people to not speak too loudly about it. So they're specifically targeting communities where they think they can build those. So I would imagine over the next year, data centers and the cost of electronics probably are going to be.
I don't even understand what a data center is. I've seen the videos of how massive they are, and it's just a bunch of switchboards in there that are holding its memory. Is it basically memory?
Yeah, it's basically basically they are just blocks and blocks of motherboards, RAM, that can help train new AI systems and keep the infrastructure running of established AI systems.
And they're run off these little chips that need to be able to stay a certain
Yep.
temperature, because when they're operating, they get hot.
Yep.
And so you have to cool them.
Yeah, in a very basic understanding, it's like if you took a whole bunch of desktop computers and bolted them together for like the size of Manhattan, right? And you just need the processing power to output energy to train the models and to sustain the AI models. So it's...
So if someone could invent a heatless computer chip, that would be...
Yeah. That would, and there are people that have claimed that they've done it in the last few years, but that has not happened yet. There's also been a push for the expansion of nuclear energy as a way to, because these data centers are just mass sponges of energy, because they need a lot to run. So that, there's been a lot of investment in nuclear energy companies as a result as well. But it's... I don't know. It's one of those things where at a certain point, what's the cost benefit analysis to the communities that these things are being built in?
I think everything the city does should have a one sheet that is a return on investment, or, everything they do.
Yeah.
They should have some sort of just little sheet that is like, we're going to give this company this amount of money. Here's what we anticipate getting out of it. Here's the time I don't know. I just think for so many things, not just a data center, but what is the benefit?
Yeah.
It's like, interesting. Okay. So we'll keep our eyes on the data centers.
Data centers and computer prices. I'm a gamer, and it's not looking good. The next generation of video game consoles are not... The pricing is not looking good, thanks to...
Oh, because of the shortage. It's going to hurt the...
Yeah.
Okay, we
play because
video
they're
games
using
too.
Essentially... Yeah, because all of these centers, like NVIDIA, which is now like one of the biggest companies ever, their main business before data centers was making chips for computer gaming, like PCs.
Wow.
And so then they realized they could make like 100x investment by building the chips for the data center. So the pricing of all those chips has exorbitantly risen.
Wow.
So I'm a little salty about that because it looks like we're entering a less financially efficient. It's going to be a lot more expensive.
Can I ask you one very unrelated question?
Sure.
You probably need to leave, but what do you think about all these little kids on motorcycles running around Rock Island? Because you are into the biking and BMX, and I am too. What do you think? Because I love the idea of little kids working on bikes, and I see kids tinkering on their little motorcycles, and being together and being outside. And
yeah, I don't know if I have an opinion yet.
Have you seen them riding around?
I have. Yeah, it's one of those things where I spent most of my youth in Rock Island riding my bike around, around this area, around Rock Island High School, around Whitewater Junction, to the library, the Midtown Library. Like, that was how I got around.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that's like, well, it's not too different. But then I'm like, oh, couldn't they have bikes? But then I'm like, am I old man yelling at a crowd for that? So I don't know if I really have too much of an opinion.
Yeah.
I hope people aren't getting hurt, I guess, is the most I can give.
Well, my neighbor rides one, and she's the cutest little girl. She's been like, she wears a helmet. And,
Sure.
But they are like tiny motorcycles. Right. We have a lot in my little court, and the courts. But I drive a giant pickup truck, and my teenage daughter is now driving, and it's hard to see over.
Sure.
You kind of have to be really aware of your surroundings. And if someone is in front of my truck, there's no way I can see them because they're so low to the ground. Sure. So I'm more worried about myself of hitting someone.
Yeah, you don't want to hurt. Yeah, you don't want to hurt someone.
Or my new driver, because they're fast and they're not quite cars, so they're not quite following the rules of the road. They're not bicycles.
Right.
It's just complicated.
Yeah. It is. And I'm not. Yeah, I'm sure I will gain more opinions as I
now that
see them.
I put in your brain, you're gonna see them.
I'll be keeping an eye out for them more. It's I don't know if I have too much of an opinion outside of I hope people aren't getting hurt, and I wonder that they do feel like they're skirting like a gray area of like if they need a plate or not, because I know even golf carts need some sort of don't you need
control or
I'm pretty sure, you don't need a license, but don't you need like plates or something for a golf? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm speaking way out of my depth on that.
But you love
There's
seeing
rules
kids.
around it.
I mean, you love seeing like a group of kids just like going
Hanging
to the
out in the
park
community.
and being outside and being together and that's fun.
I'm very aware of the people, that summer when Pokemon Go was a big thing a few years ago, and there were kids getting the cops called on them for like going to parks, and it's like, why are there so many kids at the parks? It's like, okay, I'm very conscious of not becoming that person, because it's like we should be incentivizing kids to being outside and doing things.
The backlash to technology where it's really cool to go to the pool now and take a book. And you read your book and you're cool. Yeah, you've got a book. You have a book on the... I do.
That's the book I've been reading. I didn't know how, I showed up a little early. So, there's if anyone does read my article, there's a number of book recommendations at the end, and I'm almost through this one. It's Blood in the Machine. It's a history book of the Luddite movement during the Industrial Revolution. So there's a movement of people. They were losing their jobs. They were cotton workers or people that were being put in factories. They used to be tradesmen that lost their work to factories and automation. And they essentially created a fictitious Robin Hood figure, General Ned Ludd, that they then would like sneak into the factories at night and destroy all the machines, and they would leave little notes behind from General Ned Ludd, like these little cheeky... Anyway, and so then there was a whole bunch of backlash to that, and it was a struggle between working people and these factory owners.
Wow. And this is all real? This is true?
Oh, yes. Real
the Luddite? I've heard of Luddites.
Yep.
Is that where that comes from?
Yes, it comes from that. And then during the court case, when a lot of these Luddites were rounded up eventually and they were caught, the court case kind of framed them as people that were scared of technology and didn't like it. And so that's where the term Luddite that we know comes from, that court case, because the factory owners were able to convince people that they're just like against progress, when in reality they were just advocating for... essentially what they were advocating for was a lot of things that we hear a lot about today, like training programs to give them chances to work in the factories or work, because they're essentially left without jobs at the end of it. So there's a lot of commentary on what we can learn from that beginning of Industrial Revolution to today with automation and AI and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a good book. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Cool. Well, get all your reading in now before that
baby
arrives. Atticus is having a baby, and he's gonna... That's so fun. Well, all right. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'm sure... we'll definitely talk again, and I hope you have a really great summer.
Yeah, you as well. You as well, Annika.
Yeah, thanks Atticus. Thanks for tuning in to the Rock Island Line and for listening to this conversation with Atticus Garrison. If you're interested in technology within the city, reach out to your city council member and ask questions. You can reach out to our police chief, talk to your neighbors, but just stay involved and stay engaged in the city of Rock Island. Things I'm currently working on include following what's going on at Century Woods in Rock Island, issues with the environment and Dell's Metal, doing an analysis of how the city of Rock Island spent their business assistance dollars through the American Rescue Plan money that Rock Island received. Let's see, what else? I'm following the third place QC, and they are going to likely require a new location, so kind of following their search for a home in Rock Island. Yeah, just telling stories, staying focused on what's happening with the city of Rock Island and our community. Reach out to me with questions, ideas, comments. I'd love to hear from you. And we will see you on the Rock Island Line podcast again at a date to be determined. So stay engaged, believe in Rock Island, believe in this community, and I will see you on the flip side.